Easter 1960, April 16th. 25-year-old Irene Garza was going to confession at her local church in McAllen, Texas. She lived with her parents, and as she left, she told them that she would be back soon. She was seen in the confession line that night, remembered because her striking beauty stuck out to witnesses. Said by a reporter, "One person told me that sometimes guys her age would actually go to church just hoping to see her or run into her. She was seen in the confession line. She was seen putting a white lace veil over her head, but she was never seen leaving." Irene didn't come home that night. Around 3 a.m., her parents began to worry. She always called her mother if she was going to be late. Her father went down to the church to look for her and found only her empty car. He immediately went to the McAllen Police Department and filed a missing persons report. The next day, one of Irene's shoes was found by the side of the road, along with her purse and a piece of her veil. A search party was formed, at the time being the largest that had been conducted in the area. After 5 days of looking, Irene's body was finally found floating in an irrigation canal several miles away from where she was last seen. Upon initial inspection, she was fully dressed except for her shoes, socks, and underwear. A green slide viewer and a black cord that had possibly been used to bind her hands were found next to her body. An autopsy was performed after her discovery. In the official report, it stated that the skin around both eyes was swollen and reddish in color, which often indicates strangulation. However, it was also said that no bruises were found on her neck, and no fractures of the larynx were found. This led the medical examiner to determine that Irene had died by suffocation, since no extreme fractures of the skull were found, nor were there any injuries consistent with a stabbing or a shooting. The medical examiner also concluded that Irene had been raped, probably while she was still alive but unconscious. There was a wound on the back of her head that could have knocked her unconscious, but it wasn't enough to kill her. However, semen could not be extracted for DNA, most likely because it had been washed away while she laid in the canal. Irene had already been dead when she was placed in the water. There was no water in her lungs. It seemed most likely that she had been knocked unconscious, raped, and suffocated with a cloth or an object placed over her nose and mouth without ever waking up. Irene was born in Texas in 1935. Her parents, Josephine and Nicholas, had married in 1932, and they owned a dry cleaning business. She had one sister, Josie. She attended McAllen High School, where she was the first Latina twirler and head drum majorette. She was also crowned homecoming queen and graduated in 1951, being the first in her family to finish high school. Irene was a beauty queen and was given the title of Miss All-South Texas Sweetheart in 1958. She taught second grade at a low-income elementary school on the south side of McAllen. She enjoyed this, even becoming secretary of her parent-teacher association later. A former student of hers remembers, "She was kind, generous, and she did help all of us when she went down the aisle, making sure our work was done." Irene was also deeply religious, attending church every Sunday and confession every Saturday. In a letter written to a friend, she said, "Remember the last time we talked? I told you I was afraid of death. Well, I am cured. I no longer fear death. I have been going to Mass and Communion every day, and you can't imagine the courage, the faith, and the happiness it has given me. I pray to God that I will love Him as I should, because many times I find myself wanting to rebel against Him, especially with all the sadness in the world. But I know I'm just a human, and He's so much smarter than I. Who am I to question His ways? God didn't make things easy for us." After the discovery of Irene's body, police went to notify her family. Josephine collapsed and screamed, with her niece recalling. They said it was this long, awful moan from deep inside of her body, almost like the howl of a wolf. They said it was like nothing they had ever heard or ever heard again. Police started by trying to find the owner of the slide viewer found near Irene's body. 2 days after they asked the public for help, a man named John Feet wrote police a note telling them that it belonged to him, without giving an explanation as to why it had been with Irene. In 1960, she had been attending the Sacred Heart Church in McAllen. A friend remembers Irene telling her about a new priest, Father John Feet, who she found very handsome. However, he was a little strange. He would often pull Irene out of confession and take her to the rectory, a smaller building near the church, something that was not common practice. It was also noted that Feet had multiple scratch marks on his hands in the days following Irene's disappearance, which he explained away by saying that he had been locked out of his residence and injured his hands trying to get back in. He was asked to take a polygraph test by police, but the results were inconclusive. When questioned by police, he also admitted that the night Irene had disappeared, he had heard her confession in the rectory. 23 days before, he had attacked another woman, Maria America Guerra. She had been kneeling at the confession rail at another nearby church when a man grabbed her from behind and tried to force a rag over her mouth. She fought him off and escaped, later identifying Feet from a police lineup as her attacker. In 1961, he was indicted for the attempted assault of Maria. However, at his trial, the jury deadlocked, and he ultimately only had to pay a $500 fee. Soon after this, he left McAllen to go to a monastery in Missouri. The case went cold soon after this. Unknown to police, in 1963, Feet confessed to a monk named Dale Tackney that he was, in fact, the man who had killed Irene Garza. Tackney would go to police in 2002. From his statement, he said he took her down to the basement and somehow she remained there. I assume that he tied her up. The next day, when he had to go back to the church for masses, Easter Sunday I believe it was, he put her in the bathroom, put her in the tub, and put her in a bag or something over her head. When he was leaving, he heard her say, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe," and with that, he shut the door and left. When he came back, he opened the bathroom door and she was dead, and then he dumped the body along the road by a canal. He felt it was not his job to judge Feet, but could no longer keep the secret. The case was reopened soon after. DNA testing was redone on the clothing that Irene had been wearing when she was killed, but nothing could be found due to the amount of time that she had been in the water. Tackney was asked to call Feet so police could record the call. When asked about Irene, he replied, "At the time I was in the monastery, I was pretty much a broken man, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually. I have no recollection of what I may have told you at that time, and I am telling you this evening that I am not the man who killed Irene Garza." Still, police felt that they had enough evidence to take the case to court. They were turned down by the district attorney due to the age of the case, and in 2004, the grand jury officially declined to indict Feet. It wouldn't be until 10 years later that a new district attorney would seriously look into the case. This time, Feet was 83 years old. When confronted by a reporter, he exclaimed, "Dale is full of shit. S-H-I-T. In February 2016, he was indicted. Feet's trial was set for April of 2017. Dale Tackney testified against him out of court and closed disposition. John Feet was sentenced to life in prison. He would die in 2020, only having served 2 years. Said Irene's niece, "Justice was served. Irene finally got her day in court, and that was all we wanted." Tackney said, "The debt is paid, both to Irene and to Father Feet. Justice has been done for the both of them."